When you're 78, your past becomes clearer than your present. Every morning, I, Edgar Hutton, wake up in my old house on Merrimack Street in Lowell and see cracks in the ceiling that resemble a map of years gone by. A map where every line is a mark of the frustration, mistrust, and caution I've accumulated over the years as an insurance investigator. Lowell was never a fashionable town. The textile mills closed long ago, leaving behind brick skeletons along the Merrimack River. I moved here 43 years ago when I married Eleanor. She died 10 years ago of lung cancer, leaving me alone with a house full of memories and a son who seemed to be just waiting for her death to start claiming his inheritance. Today is Sunday, the day Alfred and his wife Virginia usually visit me. I say visit, but it's really more like an inspection. They arrive around 4 in the afternoon, bring some food that I usually throw away after they leave, and spend 2 hours gingerly looking for signs that I'm becoming incompetent. Dad, do you remember what we said about your medication? Alfred always starts with that. He's 46, but when he talks to me, his voice is the way it usually is with a naughty child. Of course I remember, I reply, though we've never discussed my medications. I have high blood pressure and mild arthritis. Nothing serious, nothing that requires his intervention. Virginia, his wife, always sits next to him on the couch. She is 10 years younger than Alfred and works for a travel agency. Always impeccably dressed, with those nails of hers the color of dried blood, and a smile that never reaches her eyes. Edgar, she's the only one who calls me by my first name, like we're friends. We were thinking maybe you should consider a trust, so you don't have to worry about accounts and investments. I nod and pretend to ponder this. What I'm really pondering is how 35 years on the job has taught me how to recognize scammers. I've seen people who set their own houses on fire for insurance. I've seen disabled people who by some miracle could lift weights when they thought no one could see them. I've seen widows who mourned their husbands at funerals and then a week later went to the Bahamas with their lovers. People lie. They always do, especially when it comes to money. I'll think about it, I say, and see them exchange glances. My pension isn't bad. I've also made some good investments over the years. I have this house fully paid off and an account with a sum that could see me living comfortably until I'm 100 years old, if I chose to live that long. It's not millions, but enough to pique the interest of my only son and his wife, who seem to have already spent all their money on luxury vacations and a car they can't afford. How's your memory been lately, Dad? Alfred asks as Virginia goes into the kitchen, ostensibly to make tea. I can hear her opening drawers and cupboards, checking to see if I'm hiding anything valuable, or maybe looking for signs that I can't keep things in order. There's nothing wrong with my memory, I reply. I remember when you wet your pants during the school play in 3rd grade. I remember you wrecked your friend's car and lied about getting cut off. I remember you begging for money for college and then dropping out after the first semester. Alfred's face turns red. He hates it when I remind him of his failures. And there were quite a few. Alfred has never been known for perseverance. He started many projects, a music band, an online business, a programming course, but never followed through. Now he works as a coordinator for a delivery service, a job he says is temporary, even though he's been in the position for 7 years. I'm just worried about you, he says with irritation in his voice. Don't you think this house is too big for one person? I look around. A 3-bedroom house with a 1.5-story basement? Yeah, it's too big for me. But it's my house. This is where I lived with Eleanor all our years together. Every single thing here has a story. I like the space, I say. Virginia returns with the tea I didn't ask for. Sanashon. You know, Edgar, we have friends whose parents have moved into such beautiful boarding homes for the elderly. There are nurses there, activities, socializing. Activities, I correct her. She hates it when I do that. Yes, activities, she smiles strangely. Anyway, they say their parents are much happier now. And of course, they don't have to worry about the house. Sounds like a well-fed prison, I reply. Alfred sighs. Dad, we're just offering options. You're 78. Virginia and I won't always be able to come over to make sure you're okay. I'm doing just fine on my own, I say. And by the way, I changed my will last week. That's a lie. I haven't changed my will in 5 years. But I want to see their reaction. They freeze. Alfred sets the cup on the table so sharply that the tea spills out. Why? He asks, trying to hide his alarm. I mean, you have the right, but What's wrong? Nothing much, I shrug. Just thought I'd clean things up. And what did you change? Virginia tries to sound casual, but her voice is strained. It's personal, I answer. But don't worry, I haven't forgotten about my family. They exchange glances again. In their eyes, I see calculation, worry, greed. Not love, not caring, just cold financial interest. After they leave, I sit in my chair by the window and watch them get into their black BMW, a car I'm sure they can't afford. I see them talking vigorously, probably discussing me and my condition. In my 35 years as an insurance investigator, I've learned to see a lie. It's like a sixth sense. You notice micro expressions, inconsistencies in stories, nervous gestures, and my sixth sense screams that Alfred and Virginia are up to something. There's a safe in my bedroom on the second floor, an old-fashioned one with a mechanical lock. I keep important documents in there, some cash for emergencies, and a few of Eleanor's memorabilia, her engagement ring, the pearl necklace I gave her for our 20th anniversary. A week ago, I noticed someone had tried to open this safe. There were small scratches on the dial that weren't there before. The lock was slightly dislodged. Someone inexperienced might not have noticed it, but I'd been on the job too long not to see details like that. It had to be Alfred. Maybe one of those days when he dropped in to check on me while I was working in the garden. Or maybe he has a key I don't know about. Either way, it confirms my suspicions. They're not just interested in my well-being. They want to gain control of my finances while I'm still alive. And if they can't, they want to wait until I'm dead and take everything. But I'm not going to make it easy for them. If life has taught me anything, it's that you have to stay one step ahead of those who are trying to screw you over. I walk up the stairs, feeling the pain in my knee, a reminder that time spares no one. I walk into the bedroom and stare at the safe in the corner. I need a plan, a way to prove that Alfred and Virginia only care about my money, not me. And I think I have an idea how to do it. Tuesday was rainy and dank, as it often is in Lowell in mid-autumn. Water ran down the window panes, washing away the dust and making the world outside a blurry blur. I was sitting in my office sorting through old photographs, an activity that had grown in value over the years. They were of Eleanor and me, trips to the ocean, Christmases when Alfred had been little and had looked at us with genuine admiration. Now all I see in his eyes is impatience and calculation. It had been 2 days since their last visit, and I was still wondering how far they would go in their quest for my money. The ringing of the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. I was not expecting visitors. The clock showed the beginning of the second, and on Tuesdays I usually didn't get any visitors. I walked slowly down the stairs, trying not to disturb my aching knee. When I opened the door, I saw Alfred, drenched in the rain, though he had an umbrella in his hand. His face showed concern, but his eyes remained cold. "Papa, I apologize for the sudden visit. I was driving by and thought I'd stop by and check on you." "Driving by?" I didn't hide my skepticism. My house is in a quiet residential neighborhood off the main roads. No one just happens to drive by. "Yeah, been to a client's nearby," he lied, entering the hallway and shaking the water off his coat. "Virginia's here too. She's in the car. Mind if she comes in?" I shrugged. "Sure, go get her." Alfred peeked out the door and waved. Virginia appeared a few seconds later, with her hair perfectly styled, despite the rain, and a large bag over her shoulder. She kissed me on the cheek, leaving a trail of sticky lipstick. "Edgar, darling, how good to see you." I led them into the living room. Something in their demeanor alerted me. They looked at each other too often, spoke too kindly. "Tea? Coffee?" I offered, though I was sure they'd refuse. "No thank you, Papa," Alfred replied. "We won't be long. We just wanted to make sure you were all right. You live alone, and with this weather—" "I'm fine," I said. "Like I said on Sunday." "Good, good," Alfred held up his hands in a conciliatory gesture. "Just checking in. By the way, we brought you some new vitamins. Virginia read that they're especially good for men your age." Virginia took a plastic jar of pills out of her bag and set it on the coffee table. "It's a magnesium and zinc complex," she explained. "It's very good for your memory." "There's nothing wrong with my memory," I repeated. "Sure," she agreed quickly, "but prevention never hurts. You know my father, when he was your age, he started forgetting little things and then—" She stopped. She stopped, her lips tightening. "Anyway, it's better to be safe." I picked up the jar and twirled it around in my hands. It looked normal, but something told me not to take the pills. Thank you, I put the jar aside. I'll show them to my doctor at my next appointment. Alfred frowned. Dad, they're just vitamins. They're not even prescription. Still, I prefer to consult Dr. Pearson. He's been guiding me for 15 years. The tension in the room became almost palpable. Virginia smiled strained and changed the subject. Edgar, have you thought about installing an emergency call system? You know, the kind of button you can wear around your neck, in case you fall or feel sick. Chakato. I'll think about that when I'm 90, I replied, not hiding my sarcasm. They stayed for another half hour or so, asking me how I was feeling, how I was doing at home, and if I remembered to take my blood pressure medication. All the while I sensed they were interested in something else. Their gazes wandered around the room, as if they were looking for something specific. Finally, Alfred looked at his watch. We have to go, Dad. Virginia has a meeting at 3 o'clock. I walked them to the door. As Virginia was leaving, she turned around. By the way, Edgar, you haven't told us any details about your new will. Shouldn't we at least know the basics, just in case? Just in case of what? I asked. She hesitated. Well, you know, to be ready in case something happens. Sure, Norn. If something happens, the lawyer will contact you, I replied. All the documents are in perfect order. After they left, I stood at the window for a long time, watching their car drive away. Something was definitely wrong. Their sudden visit, the strange vitamins, the questions about the will it all added up to a disturbing picture. I went back into the living room and picked up the jar of vitamins. Maybe I was being too suspicious. 35 years in the insurance business have taught me to see fraud where others see simple randomness. But what if I'm right this time? Determined to test my suspicions, I took the jar into the kitchen and stashed it in a far drawer. Later, I would take it to a pharmacist I knew to check the composition. The rest of the day passed quietly. I read, watched the news, made myself a simple dinner. At around 8 o'clock in the evening, I was about to go upstairs when I heard the sound of a car pulling up. Looking out the window, I recognized Alfred's BMW. What had they forgotten? Why were they back so late? I waited for the doorbell to ring, but it didn't. Instead, I heard the key turn in the lock. Alfred had a spare key I'd given him years ago for emergencies, but he'd never used it unannounced before. Instinctively, I retreated into the shadows of the hallway. The door opened quietly, and I heard Virginia whisper, "Are you sure he's asleep?" "Yes," Alfred answered. "He always goes to bed at 8 o'clock, and I put sleeping pills in his coffee today. I got a chill. So they put something in my coffee. It's a good thing I, in the habit of an old investigator, always pour out the first cup I'm offered when no one is looking." "Good," Virginia continued to whisper. "Hurry up then. We need to find his new will and check the safe." They walked quietly into the living room. I could hear them carefully pulling out the desk drawers, going through the papers. "Shit, there's nothing here," Alfred cursed. "Let's go upstairs. The will must be somewhere in the study or the bedroom." "What if he wakes up?" Virginia worried. "He wouldn't. The dose was enough to bring down a man twice his size." I stood in the shadows as they climbed the stairs. When their footsteps died down at the top, I followed quietly, trying not to step on the creaking steps I knew well. From the second-floor hallway, I watched them enter my bedroom. The door was left ajar, and the light from the room fell in a thin streak across the hallway floor. I crept closer and listened. "There's the safe," Alfred said. "We'll have to try to open it." "Do you know the code?" Virginia asked. "No, but I saw my father open it once. I think there was a combination of dates. Maybe Mom's birthday or their wedding date." I could hear him fiddling with the lock, trying different combinations. I wanted to break in and catch them red-handed, but I decided to wait and find out more. "Damn it, this isn't working," Alfred grumbled after a few minutes. "Why don't we try my father's date of birth?" "Try it," Virginia said impatiently. "But if it doesn't work, we'll have to think of Plan B." "Plan B takes time," Alfred objected. "We'll have to gather enough evidence of his incompetence, find a suitable psychiatrist, prepare the documents. It's the only way to get legal access to his accounts while he's alive," Virginia insisted. "And now is the time. He's getting more and more suspicious. Did you see how he reacted to the vitamins?" "Yes, I did," Alfred agreed. "What if the sleeping pills didn't work?" Maybe he didn't drink coffee at all. It did work, Virginia said confidently. I saw him take a few sips. He should be sleeping like a dead man by now. I retreated into the shadows as Alfred went to the door and looked out into the hallway. Quiet, he said. I thought I heard something. They were silent for a few seconds, listening. I held my breath against the wall. You imagined it, Virginia said at last. Let's look in his office. Maybe the will is there. They left the bedroom and headed toward my office at the end of the hall. I slipped into the bathroom and closed the door, leaving a small slit to keep an eye on them. There were muffled voices coming from the study, the sound of drawers opening and closing. 10 minutes later, they returned to the hallway. Nothing, Alfred said disappointedly. No will, no deeds to the house, no bank statements. Where the hell did he keep all this stuff? Maybe in a safety deposit box? Virginia suggested. Or a lawyer? Maybe, Alfred looked annoyed. But we need to know for sure. If he really did change the will. He might have lied, Virginia said, to test our reaction. Even if he did, we still need to act quickly. His estate is valued at about $500,000, including the house and investments. I'm not going to wait another 10 years until he decides to die a natural death. Hush, Virginia cut him off. Don't say that. What if the neighbors hear? What neighbors? The nearest house is 50 meters away, and a deaf old woman lives there. They went down the stairs. I came out of the bathroom and followed them cautiously, staying in the shadows. So what are we doing? Virginia asked when they were already at the front door. We go to Plan B, Alfred answered firmly. I'll contact Dr. Ramirez. He's helped with cases like this before. If he confirms that the father is incapacitated by dementia or some other cognitive impairment, the court can appoint me as his guardian. And then we'd have access to everything, Virginia finished for him. They walked out, closing the door quietly behind them. I heard the engine start, the crunch of gravel under their wheels, and then silence. I stood in the darkness of the hallway, feeling the cold rage building up inside. My own son was planning to have me declared incompetent for money. He and his wife were ready to bribe a doctor, to fabricate a medical report, to deprive me of the right to control my own life and property. When I went up to the bedroom, I saw the signs of their intrusion. Open dresser drawers, shifting papers on the bedside table, a safe with scratches on the dial new, fresh scratches. I sat on the edge of the bed, contemplating the situation. Now I knew exactly what they were up to. I had the advantage of the element of surprise. They think I suspect nothing, that I'm a gullible old man easily fooled. But they're wrong. I'm not just any old man. I'm an old insurance investigator who's been catching crooks for 35 years. And now it's time to teach my son and his greedy wife a lesson. I've decided to get ahead of them. Prepare a trap that will expose their true intentions once and for all. A trap from which they would never escape. I walked over to the safe and dialed the combination, not Eleanor's birthday or our wedding date, but a random set of numbers I'd chosen precisely because it meant nothing. Inside were documents, some cash, and a box of Eleanor's jewelry. Looking at the contents of the safe, I began to form a plan that would allow me to not only protect myself, but also teach Alfred and Virginia a lesson they would remember for the rest of their lives. The next morning I awoke at first light, feeling an unusual burst of energy. The plan had matured in my mind overnight, taking clear shape. The first thing I did was to call my old friend Leonard Tyler, who had worked side by side with me for almost 20 years at the insurance company. He was always a master of technical tricks. Edgar? He was surprised to hear my voice. What's wrong? You rarely call this early. I need your help, Leo, and your discretion. I summarized the situation, omitting personal details. All I said was that I suspected attempted fraud and wanted to collect evidence. Miniature cameras? Leo interjected. Yes, I have a couple. Left over from when I was investigating that bus driver, remember? I can bring them over this afternoon. I'd appreciate it, I said. One more thing. Where do you think you can get counterfeit money? Not real fakes, but theater props. There was silence on the other end of the line. Edgar, are you sure you know what you're doing? Leo's voice sounded worried. Absolutely, I answered. I'm not breaking the law. I just want to teach someone a lesson. Leo sighed. Okay, my granddaughter plays in the school theater. They must have props like this. I'll see what I can do. After breakfast, I headed into town. First stop was the Quick Print Shop on Main Street, a small, family-owned business where I was well known. I asked them to print a few fake documents. A fake certificate of title for a non-existent property in Vermont, fake bank statements showing substantial amounts in offshore accounts, and a fake will listing the primary beneficiary as one Eleanor Hutton Research Support Foundation, a non-existent organization. Oh, I want to play a trick on my son, I explained to the owner of the print shop when he looked suspiciously at my unusual order. His birthday is coming up, and I'm preparing a surprise. He nodded, clearly not believing me, but didn't ask any questions. Professional ethics in small towns have their advantages. Next stop was the hardware store where I bought a new lock for the safe. Not too complicated for Alfred to open, but not too simple to make him bother. When I got home, I set about preparing the safe. I took out all the valuables, documents, cash, Eleanor's jewelry, and hid them in a hiding place under a floorboard in the dressing room that Alfred didn't know about. Then he carefully cleaned the safe of fingerprints and installed a new lock. Toward evening, Leo arrived with the cameras and a wad of theater money. Here, he said, laying out two miniature cameras the size of buttons on the table. One can be set up to cover the safe, the other to see the whole room. They're wireless, with a motion sensor. The recording is automatically activated when someone enters the room. He helped me install and set up the cameras. We hid one in an antique clock on the mantelpiece, the other in a vase on the dresser. Both were pointed at the safe. Here's the money. Leo handed me a wad of green papers. My granddaughter said it was for a school play about a bank robbery. They look pretty convincing, but you can tell it's not real to the touch. I counted the money. Looks like about $50,000 in $100 bills. It's perfect. Thanks, Leo. I'll return it as soon as I complete my experiment. With Leo gone, I began the final part of my preparations. Filled the safe with fake money, putting some real bills on top to make it look real. I added fake documents, and on top of them, I put the most valuable bait, an old box with cheap costume jewelry, which in the semi-darkness could easily be mistaken for real jewelry. Finished with the safe, I set up a new combination. Eleanor's birthday, the first thing on Alfred's mind. I spent the next 2 days trying to give the impression of a deteriorating condition. When Alfred called on Thursday, I spoke slowly, sometimes mixing up my words. Dad, are you all right? He sounded worried, not for me, but for his plans. Yes, yes, I answered, deliberately stammering. I'm just a little tired. You know, age. Maybe I should stop by, check on you? No need, I paused. Although, maybe Sunday. There's something important I'd like to discuss with you, about the future. Of course, Dad, he said, a note of impatience in his voice. Virginia and I will arrive at the usual time. On Sunday, I prepared for their visit with the utmost care. I placed small signs of forgetfulness around the house. A half-drunk cup of coffee on the table, an open book on the couch, an uneaten breakfast in the kitchen. He put on a house robe and slippers, though he usually preferred to be fully dressed when he received guests. Alfred and Virginia arrived at 4 o'clock sharp. I met them in the hallway, slouching slightly and leaning on the cane I usually used only when my arthritis worsened. So, Dad, Alfred gave me a concerned look. You look tired. Ah, I waved my hand. Old age is no fun. Come in, come in. We settled into the living room. Virginia took a quick look around the room, noting the signs of untidiness I'd left behind. Edgar, she began with feigned concern, maybe you need some help around the house. We could hire someone. No, I shook my head. I don't want strangers in the house. I'll do it myself. You said you wanted to talk about something, Alfred reminded me, getting to the point. Yes, I sighed. I was thinking, maybe you're right. Maybe I do need help with my finances. It's getting hard to keep track of everything. Their faces perked up. They exchanged quick glances. It's a very big decision, Dad, Alfred said carefully. We could help. For example, I could be your confidant. Maybe, I pretended to think about it. I'd have to think it over. I have some savings. And your mother's jewelry. We know, Papa. Alfred put his hand on my shoulder. And we'll make sure everything is safe. Yes, I rubbed my forehead. By the way, I recently moved some things into the safe. just to be safe. You know, there's so much talk on the news about thefts. I noticed the sparkle in Virginia's eyes. That's very thoughtful, Edgar, she said. Where do you keep the key to the safe? What key? I pretended not to understand. It's a combination lock. The numbers. I stopped talking, like I was trying to remember. I think it was Eleanor's birthday, or our anniversary. I don't remember exactly. Don't worry about that now, Dad, Alfred said hastily. The important thing is that things are safe. The rest of their visit was spent discussing my condition. They cautiously questioned me about the medication, asking if I was forgetting to take it, if I was having memory lapses. I kept them deluded, sometimes forgetting what we were talking about a moment ago, or confusing names. As they got ready to leave, I said, I'll probably go see Dr. Pearson tomorrow. My blood pressure's been acting up. Do you want me to drive you? Alfred offered. No, I can manage, I smiled. I'm not a wreck yet. What time's the reception? Virginia asked. 11 o'clock in the morning, I lied. Then I'll stop by the bank. Maybe have lunch somewhere in town. Okay, Dad, Alfred patted me on the shoulder. Call me if you need anything. As soon as their car was around the corner, I straightened, tossed back my cane, and grinned. They'd taken the bait. Now all that was left to do was wait. The next morning, I defiantly drove the car out of the garage around 10 o'clock. Drove a few blocks, then went back roundabout and parked 2 houses away from mine where I couldn't be seen from the street. Came home through the back door, entered quietly, and settled into my secret observation post, a small closet under the stairs where I had set up a monitor connected to the surveillance cameras. I didn't have to wait long. Around 11:30, I heard the key turn in the lock. Alfred and Virginia appeared on the monitor, sneaking through the hallway. Are you sure he's gone? Virginia asked in a whisper. Psst. Yes, I saw him leaving, Alfred replied. We have at least 2 hours. They quickly went up the stairs. I switched the monitor to the bedroom cameras and saw them enter. Here's the safe. Alfred walked over to it. I'll try the combination. He started spinning a disc, muttering to himself. Mom's birthday, July 28th, 28807. The lock clicked. Yes, Alfred exclaimed triumphantly. Virginia stepped impatiently closer. Open it quickly. Alfred pulled the safe door open. Their faces froze in an expression of greedy admiration when they saw the bundles of money. My God, Virginia whispered. How much is in here? Alfred quickly counted the bundles. About 50,000, I think, maybe more. What's this? Virginia pointed to the documents. Alfred took them and quickly looked through them. Real estate in Vermont. Bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. Shit, there's millions in here. I told you the old man was richer than he pretended to be, Virginia said triumphantly. And this, she pointed to a box. Alfred opened it. Mother's jewelry must be worth a fair sum. Take it all, Virginia said firmly. Hurry. All of it. Alfred hesitated. Shall we keep some of it? If he notices. So, he won't notice anything, Virginia said impatiently. You've seen the state he's in. If he does, he'll think he put it somewhere else and forgot it. Take everything. Alfred began to take out the contents of the safe and put them into the bag Virginia had brought. And the will? She asked. You said it should be here? Yes, here it is. Alfred pulled out the last document. Edgar Hutton's last will and testament. Let's see. He ran his eyes over the text and his face stretched. Shit, what is it? Virginia glanced over his shoulder. He's leaving everything to some Eleanor Hutton Research Support Fund. What? Virginia snatched the document. What foundation? I've never heard of such a thing. Neither have I, Alfred replied grimly. This must be the change he was talking about. Nasty old man, Virginia spat out. After all we've done for him, Alfred folded the will. All the more reason to take everything now. Then we'll say we don't know anything, that he must have hidden the money somewhere and forgotten about it. What if he goes to the police? Virginia was worried. With his state of memory? Alfred grinned. Who would believe him? Especially when Dr. Ramirez confirms that he has dementia. They closed the emptied safe and quickly headed for the exit. I sat in my hiding place, feeling a mixture of anger and bitter satisfaction simmering inside. They were exactly what I thought they were. Greedy, heartless, willing to steal from my own father. I let them go. I waited for their car to pull away before I came out of hiding. Going up to the bedroom, I looked at the open, empty safe. On the bed, they had left a few counterfeit bills that had fallen out of the packs in a hurry. Taking the cameras off, I plugged them into the computer and saved the recording. The evidence was perfect, clear, irrefutable. Now I had everything I needed for the next step of my plan. In the evening, the phone rang. It was Alfred, his voice sounding tense. "Dad, how are you feeling? How was the doctor's appointment?" "Fine," I answered, pretending to be distracted again. "The doctor said I was in great shape for my age." "Good, good," he said quietly. "Listen, Virginia and I were thinking of coming over tomorrow. Maybe I could help you with something around the house?" "Sure," I agreed. "Come over for dinner. I'll cook something." As I hung up the phone, I smiled. They'd probably want to see if I'd noticed I was missing, and maybe set the stage for declaring me incompetent before I could report the theft. But what they didn't know was that the game was played by my rules, that I was always one step ahead in this game, and that the biggest surprise was still ahead of them. Tuesday morning greeted me with a bright fall sun shining through the curtains. I lay in bed listening to the quiet of the house and reflected on what had happened yesterday. My plan had worked even better than I had expected. Alfred and Virginia had fallen into the trap of revealing their true intentions in front of the hidden camera. Now all that was left to do was wait for them to discover that they had stolen the prop money and false documents. I was in no hurry to get up. In my 78 years, mornings were always the hardest. My joints were stiff from the night before, my back was aching, and my thoughts were still clouded with sleep. But today I felt an unusual burst of energy and a strange, almost forgotten sense of anticipation. Finally, I got up, showered, and went down to the kitchen. I brewed a strong black coffee, one of the few habits I couldn't give up despite the doctor's warnings. Sitting at the kitchen table, I watched the camera footage on the tablet Alfred had once given me, probably so I could sign electronic documents. The quality of the video was excellent. Every word, every gesture was clearly distinguishable. "Nasty old man. After all we've done for him." Virginia's words rang in my ears. What exactly had they done for me? Come by once a week with fake smiles? Put sleeping pills in my coffee? Plan to declare me incompetent? A phone call interrupted my musings. Leo's name popped up on the screen. "How did your, experiment?" he asked after the greeting. "Even better than I expected," I answered. "They took everything, and the cameras worked perfectly." So what's next, I wondered. A plan for revenge was already forming in my head, but I wasn't in a hurry to share it, even with Leo. "We'll see," I said evasively. "By the way, can I keep the theater money for a while longer? I promise to return them safely." "Of course," Leo agreed after a short pause. "Just be careful, Edgar. Don't go too far." "I know what I'm doing," I assured him. Around noon, another call came in. This time it was Alfred. "Dad?" His voice sounded tense. "Are you home?" "Yes, of course," I answered, trying to make my voice sound weak and unsure. "Virginia and I were going to stop by today, remember? You said something about lunch." "Lunch?" I pretended not to remember. "Oh yeah, sure. Come on over." "We'll be there in half an hour," Alfred said and hung up. I grinned. I decided not to make dinner. Let them worry about that too. Instead, I sat in the living room with a book ready for the show. Exactly 30 minutes later, I heard the sound of a car pulling up. Through the window, I saw Alfred and Virginia getting out of the car. Even from a distance, I could see that they were tense. Alfred's shoulders were unnaturally squared, and Virginia was constantly fixing her hair, which she always did when she was nervous. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. "Ah, there you are," I said, trying to look distracted. Come in, come in." They entered, exchanging quick, anxious glances. "How are you feeling, Papa?" Alfred asked, studying me closely. All right, I answered. "I just forgot to make dinner." "Old head." "It's nothing," Virginia said hurriedly. "We're not hungry." We went into the living room. I deliberately sat down so that I could see their faces and began to talk about the weather and other trivial matters. They answered machine-like, obviously thinking about something else. Virginia kept fiddling with the strap of her expensive purse, and Alfred couldn't sit still. He would get up and sit down again. "Was something the matter?" I asked innocently. "You look tense." They looked at each other. Alfred coughed. Dad, have you noticed anything unusual lately? Unusual? I furrowed my brow. What do you mean? You know, is there anything missing? Or if something strange has happened? I thought about it, pretending to try to remember. No, it's just business as usual. Although, sometimes I forget where I put things. Yesterday, for example, I spent an hour looking for my glasses, and they were on my head. I laughed good-naturedly. Alfred smiled nervously. Yes, it happens. Have you looked in your safe lately? The safe? I made a surprised face. No, why would I? All my important papers are in there. I don't get them out much. Virginia fidgeted in her seat, her face pale. Speaking of papers, I continued, I've been thinking about what you were saying, about trust management. It might not be a bad idea, at my age. Really? Alfred stepped forward, a look of ill-concealed hope on his face. It's a very wise decision, Dad. Yes, I nodded. I'll just have to get the papers out of the safe. All my financial records are in there. Alfred paled sharply. Mum, maybe not now. I mean, there's no rush. We can do it some other time. Why not now? I got up. Since you're here, let's go upstairs and I'll show you what I've got. Virginia jumped up from her seat. Edgar, we don't want to bother you. This can wait. Yes, Alfred? Yes, yes, he agreed quickly. Don't make a fuss, Papa. It's no big deal, I said, heading for the stairs. Come on, come on. They had no choice but to follow me. I saw them exchange panicked glances when they thought I wasn't looking. We went up to the bedroom and I walked over to the safe. Now, I mumbled, pretending to try to remember the combination. I started spinning the disc. Dad, maybe some other time. Alfred put his hand on my shoulder, trying to stop me. You look tired. No, I'm fine, I waved him away. Oh, I remember. I dialed the combination and the lock clicked. I swung the safe door open and froze in feigned horror. What? What is it? Where is everything? Where's my money? My documents? The safe was completely empty. I turned to Alfred and Virginia with an expression of utter amazement and fear on my face. Someone had robbed me, Alfred gulped. Are you sure there was something here, Dad? Maybe you moved the stuff somewhere else and forgot? No, I grabbed his arm. There was money in here, lots of money, and papers, and your mother's jewelry. Virginia stepped closer. Edgar, calm down. Maybe you just forgot. I didn't forget anything. I raised my voice. I've been robbed. We have to call the police. Alfred and Virginia's faces contorted in horror. The police? Alfred interjected. But Papa, maybe we shouldn't be in such a hurry. Let's look first. Maybe you really did move things. No! I grabbed the phone from the bedside table. I know everything was here, and started dialing a number. Stop! Alfred grabbed the phone from me. Dad, listen. I have a confession to make. I pretended to be surprised. What? Alfred took a deep breath, glanced at Virginia, who shook her head despairingly and said, I'm the one who took the money and the documents. You? I took a step back. My own son stole from me? No. I mean, yes, but not in the way you think, he added hastily. I took them for safekeeping, for your own safety. My safety? I looked at him in disbelief. Yes, Alfred nodded, clearly making it up as he went along. You see, Virginia and I noticed that you sometimes forgot things, and we were afraid you might forget where you'd hidden the valuables, or worse, accidentally throw them away. So I temporarily took them into custody. Without my permission? I crossed my arms across my chest. That's called stealing, Alfred. No, Virginia interjected. It's not theft when you do something for the good of a person. We wanted to protect you, Edgar. I looked at them with feigned doubt. And where are my things now? Alfred and Virginia looked at each other. There was panic in their eyes. They're in a safe place, Alfred said at last. We can get them back at any time. Bring them back now, I demanded. Now? Alfred hesitated. But they're not with us. They're, in a safety deposit box. In a safety deposit box? I raised my eyebrows. What bank? What box number? Yeah, Uh, I don't remember the exact number, Alfred mumbled. But don't worry, Dad, everything's safe and sound. I decided to continue the game. Okay, then let's go to the bank right now. I want to see my things. Alfred turned pale. Now? But the bank? It's probably closed by now. I looked at my watch. It's only 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Banks don't open until 5 or 6. Yes, but Alfred was looking for an excuse. I don't have the key to the safe deposit box with me. It's at home. Then we'll go to your house, get the key, and then go to the bank. Virginia intervened. Edgar, maybe tomorrow would be better. It's late. You're tired. I want my things today, I insisted. If you can't get them back, I'm calling the police. I reached for the phone again. Alfred grabbed my arm. Dad, wait. The truth is, he hesitated, casting a desperate look at Virginia. The truth of what? I looked him straight in the eye. The money. It's not real, Alfred finally said. I pretended to be amazed. What do you mean it's not real? It's fake. Alfred lowered his head. They're theater money, props, not real dollars. I sat on the edge of the bed, feigning shock. Fake? No way. I got them from a stock sale 15 years ago. Maybe someone tricked you, Virginia said quickly. Slipped you fakes instead of real money. I shook my head. No, it was real money. I withdrew it from the bank. I held it in my hands. Dad. Alfred sat down beside me, his voice softer, almost condescending. They're definitely fakes. Very good, but fakes. We realized that as soon as we saw them. He paused, realizing he'd said too much. As soon as what? I stared at him. As soon as we saw them, Virginia finished for him, when Alfred opened the safe to see if everything was in order. And the documents? Were they fake too? I continued to play my part. Yes, Alfred nodded, clearly relieved that the conversation had gotten away from exactly how they discovered the fakes. These are some strange papers. It says real estate in Vermont and accounts in the Cayman Islands. You don't have any of that, do you? I lowered my head, pretending to be upset. No, nothing like that. But how? Who could have switched my real money and documents with fake ones? Maybe it happened a long time ago, Virginia suggested, and you just didn't notice. No, I checked the safe a month ago. There was real money in there, I insisted, watching them get more and more nervous. Dad, Alfred put his hand on my shoulder. Maybe you're wrong. At your age, your memory sometimes fails you. I'm not crazy, Alfred. I jumped to my feet. I know there was real money in my safe. And you know what? I think you stole it. Me? Alfred acted shocked. How can you say that? Because you're the only one who could have known the combination. I pointed my finger at him. You've always been greedy for money. Always wanted my inheritance before I died. Edgar, Virginia stepped between us. This is a terrible accusation. Alfred loves you. We both love you. I looked at her with contempt. Love? You love my money, not me. Dad, you're upset, and I understand that. Alfred tried to speak calmly. But to accuse us of stealing, it's too much. Maybe you should get some rest and we can talk about this later, when you've calmed down. I decided to soften a little. I didn't want to scare them off before the time was up. Maybe you're right. Yeah, I'm really upset. It's just that I was sure the money was real. We'll take care of it, Dad, Alfred assured me. We're sorry. Maybe you just forgot that you replaced the real money with this one for safety and forgot about it? I pretended to think about it. I don't remember that, but maybe you're right. I've been forgetting things lately. Sometimes. Alfred and Virginia exchanged looks of relief. They thought they had convinced me of my senile dementia, that I was beginning to doubt my own memory. You know what? Alfred said. Why don't you lie down for a while? You look tired. Virginia and I will cook something to eat. Yes, that's a good idea, said Virginia. Get some rest, Edgar. I nodded, continuing to play my part. I guess you're right. I'm feeling a little confused. They helped me lie down, and Virginia even covered me with a blanket like a baby. When they left the room, I could hear them whispering in the hallway. What are we going to do? Virginia's voice sounded worried. I don't know, Alfred answered, but he seems to be beginning to doubt his memory. That's good. What if he remembers? What if he calls the police? What police? Alfred grinned. What would he say? I've been robbed, stolen counterfeit money? He'll look like a complete idiot. Their footsteps receded down the stairs. I lay looking up at the ceiling and smiled. They had fallen into my trap and were now scurrying around like rats in a cage. My revenge was just beginning. I quietly got out of bed, walked to the dressing room, and pulled back the floorboard in the far corner. There, in a small hiding place, lay the real valuables: documents, money, and Eleanor's jewelry. Everything was safe and sound. Then I pulled my laptop, which I rarely used, out of the dresser drawer and looked at the saved security footage. I hit the send button and sent the file to my attorney's email address with a short explanatory letter. I also emailed a copy to myself, just in case Alfred tried to delete the recording from my computer. Closing the laptop, I stashed it back in the dresser. Now the evidence of their crime was in good hands. The only thing left to decide was how exactly I would use it against Alfred and Virginia, what lesson I would teach them. From downstairs came the sounds of their muffled conversation, the clinking of dishes. They were probably discussing how to convince me that I was suffering from senile dementia, how to get custody of me and my finances. But now that I had irrefutable proof of their treachery, the advantage was on my side. I could expose them at any time. I could go to the police or use the tape to blackmail them, or I could just show them that I knew the truth and watch their reaction. I decided that tomorrow when they came again, and they would surely come to continue their plan, I would put on a final performance. A performance they would remember for the rest of their lives. I greeted Wednesday morning with a sense of quiet determination. Today was to be the decisive confrontation for which I had been preparing since the moment I first suspected Alfred and Virginia's true intentions. After last night's performance, they had to return, I was sure of it. They needed to make sure I didn't go to the police and continue with their plan to declare me incapacitated. I had a leisurely breakfast, looked through the morning paper, which I still subscribed to out of old habit, and waited. Around 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Alfred's BMW parked at the curb. Opening the door, I found both Alfred and Virginia. They looked tense, but tried to hide it behind fake smiles. Dad, Alfred stepped forward. How are you feeling today? Better, I answered, letting them into the house. Much better. My head has cleared up. They exchanged quick glances. That's good, Virginia said with a strained smile. We were worried about you. I'm sure you were, I replied dryly. We walked into the living room. I took my usual chair, and they settled on the sofa opposite. Papa, Alfred began after an awkward pause, Virginia and I have been thinking a great deal about yesterday's incident. Incident? I raised my eyebrows. You mean the moment when I found my safe empty? Yes, Alfred fidgeted in his seat. Look, we understand that you're upset, but we want to help you. Help? I folded my hands in my lap. Help me how? You see, Virginia intervened, we've noticed that lately you've been having, moments of forgetfulness. It's natural at your age. Go on, I kept a nonchalant expression on my face. We think, Alfred said cautiously, that maybe you should get a checkup, just to be sure. I have a doctor I know, Dr. Ramirez, who's a specialist in age-related changes. Age-related changes, I repeated. You mean senile dementia? Not necessarily, Alfred said quickly. Just a test. And if he diagnoses me with dementia? I looked directly at my son. What then? Alfred was clearly confused. Then we'll know how best to help you. You may need some support in managing your finances and other matters. I understand, I nodded. Carmina, surely you are ready to take on this heavy burden? It is my duty as a son, Alfred said solemnly. How noble of you, I said sarcastically. Virginia frowned. Edgar, we're really worried about you. Yesterday, you were very upset about that fake money. Oh yeah, the counterfeit money, I stood up suddenly, making them wince. You know, I've been thinking about this all night and came to an interesting conclusion. They tensed up, ready for anything. And what would that be? Alfred asked cautiously. I paced the room, stopping at the window. You see, if the money is really counterfeit, as you claim, it means that someone replaced the real money with counterfeit money, and that someone must have known the combination of the safe. I turned to them. Who do you think could have done it? Maybe one of the workers who came to fix the roof last month? Virginia suggested uncertainly. Or, or a plumber. How would they know the combination? I tilted my head to the side. Maybe you wrote it down somewhere? Or did they see you open the safe? Alfred was clearly nervous. Interesting theory. I walked back to the chair, but didn't sit down. And there's only one problem. What's that? They asked almost simultaneously. I looked at them with a long, hard stare. The money couldn't be counterfeit because I withdrew it from the bank myself 15 years ago. I held them in my hands, counted them, put them in the safe. They were real, genuine United States dollars. Papa, Alfred began, and I know exactly who stole them. I interrupted him. It was you. There was dead silence. Alfred froze with his mouth open, and Virginia turned pale. Papa, this is absurd, Alfred finally squeezed out. How can you accuse us? I have proof. I pulled a small flash drive out of my pocket. It's from the surveillance camera I installed in the bedroom. It clearly shows the two of you breaking into my safe and taking the contents. They froze like two statues. Alfred's face showed shock and then rage. You've been following us? His voice trembled. This is an invasion of privacy. My privacy, I corrected him. In my house. And what's more of an invasion of privacy than stealing? It's not stealing, Virginia exclaimed. We were doing it for your own good. For my own good, I grinned. For my sake, you put sleeping pills in my coffee? Were you planning to declare me incompetent for my own good? Were you planning to embezzle all my property for my benefit? Alfred jumped to his feet. How did you? You were eavesdropping. Yes, I admitted calmly. I heard everything, and I wrote it all down. That's illegal, Alfred protested. You can't use such recordings. Do you want to check? I sat back in my chair, feeling strangely calm. Shornam, do you want to explain to the police why you broke into your father's safe? Why you tried to slip him sleeping pills? Why you planned to cheat your way into custody of him? Alfred flopped back on the couch, his face contorted with anger and fear. So the money is real? Virginia asked in a trembling voice. No, I shook my head. The money is really fake. Theater props, to be precise. I put it in the safe myself. Autumn, what? Alfred stared at me. But why? It was a trap, I explained. I had long suspected that you were after my money. You spoke too often about my health, too interested in my finances and will. I've noticed your attempts to open the safe. I overheard your conversations, so I thought I'd have you audited. An inspection? Virginia whispered. Yes, I nodded, and you failed. With a bang. There was a long pause. Alfred sat with his head down, and Virginia fidgeted nervously with the strap of her purse. What are you going to do? Alfred finally asked. What do you think? I raised my eyebrows. Look, Dad! Alfred straightened up, his voice pleading. We made a mistake. A big mistake. But we're your family. Your only son. Are you really going to go to the police? Why not? I shrugged. You'd go to court to have me declared incompetent. That's different, he exclaimed. I was doing it. He paused. For my own good? I finished for him. Keep lying, Alfred. Keep lying to yourself and to me. I will. He jumped to his feet. Yes, I wanted your money. Happy? But you've always been too damn stingy. All my life you've controlled every cent. Never really helped me. Never helped you? I stood up too. Said I paid for your college education, which you dropped out of after the first semester. Bought you your first car. Put a down payment on your house. How much more did you have to give? It's not enough. There was a lingering resentment in Alfred's eyes. You always treated money like it was more important than me. You were always busy with your work, your investigations. What about me, your son? I worked to provide for you and your mother, I said quietly, so that you could have a future. A future? He grinned bitterly. What future? Working like hell for 40 years? Like you did, to save up money you'll never spend? So that's what this is about, I shook my head. You think you're entitled to my money just because I'm your father? That I should give you everything I've earned through my labor? Sekon, you're going to die anyway, Alfred blurted out and immediately covered his mouth with his hand when he realized what he had said. There was a heavy silence in the room. I looked at my son, the man I had once held in my arms, taught to ride a bicycle, sent to first grade. Now he stood before me, waiting for me to die so he could inherit. "This is it," I said quietly. "You're going to die soon anyway." The truth at last. "Edgar," Virginia intervened. "That's not what he meant," I said. "No, that's exactly what he meant," I turned to her. "And you think so too. You're both waiting for me to die so you can have my money." "That's not true," she protested, but without much conviction. "Isn't it?" I grinned. "Then why all this talk about my fortune? Why the questions about the will? Why the plans to declare me incapacitated? Why the sleeping pills in my coffee?" They were silent, avoiding my gaze. "I'll tell you what." I took a step toward them. "Get out of my house, now!" "Dad?" Alfred started. "No." I held up my hand. "I don't want to hear anything. No excuses, no apologies. Just walk away." "And then what?" Alfred asked, his voice trembling. "Will you go to the police?" I looked at him for a long time, at my only son, who turned out to be a stranger. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I haven't decided yet, but I can tell you one thing for sure. You won't get a dime from me anymore." "We can fix this," Virginia intervened. "We'll be better. We'll take real care of you." "Do you expect me to believe that after everything I've learned?" I shook my head. "No, Virginia. Some things can't be undone. Some betrayals are too deep." Alfred looked at me with an agonizing mixture of anger and fear. "You've always been like this. Cold. Calculating. Even with Mom." The words hit me like a slap in the face. Eleanor. Was that what she thought of me too? "Don't bring your mother into this," I said quietly but firmly. "She knew who I was, and she loved me for who I was." "She put up with you," Alfred spat out. She put up with your obsession with work, your paranoia, your stinginess. She deserved better." I took a deep breath, fighting the wave of pain and anger. "Maybe you're right," I said finally. "Maybe she did deserve better, but she chose me and stayed with me until the end." "Because she was too kind to leave," Alfred snapped at me. "And I guess you didn't inherit her kindness," I said dryly. Alfred clenched his fists. "You know what? Do whatever you want. Go to the police. Tell them everything. I don't care. But don't think I'm going to sit quietly. I'm going to tell everyone what kind of father you really were. How you always put work before family. How you didn't come to my graduation because you had important business. How you missed my mom's 16th birthday because you were investigating another fraud." Every word hit the mark. They were mistakes I made, moments I regretted for the rest of my life. I wasn't the perfect father, I admitted, and I wasn't the perfect husband. I had my flaws, my mistakes, but I never betrayed my family, never lied to you, never tried to take what was yours. "No, you just kept us on a short leash," Alfred said bitterly. "Always controlling, always judging. Never really believed in me." "I believed in you," I countered, "but you never followed through on anything, always looking for the easy way out, always waiting for someone else to solve your problems." Virginia stepped between us. "Enough, both of you. This is getting us nowhere." She turned to me. "Edgar, we'll leave, but please think carefully before you do anything irreversible. We're your family no matter what." "Family doesn't try to steal from each other," I replied. "The family isn't planning to declare the birth father crazy for money. Just because we share a last name and blood doesn't make us family. Actions do." Alfred looked at me with hatred. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. "When you're alone, when there's no one to give you a glass of water." "Better alone than with people waiting for you to die," I said. They headed for the exit. Alfred stopped at the door and turned around. "You know what the funny thing is? If you would have just helped us when we asked, if you'd just given us some money when we were in trouble, none of this would have happened." "Maybe," I agreed. "Or maybe you would have just come for more." "Greed knows no bounds, Alfred." "Oh, are you talking to me about greed?" He shook his head. "A man who has saved up $500,000 and lives like a pauper? I live as I am comfortable," I answered, "and it's my money earned by my labor. I don't have to give it to you just because you're my son." "Goodbye, Dad," Alfred said bitterly. I hope you enjoy living with your money. They will be the only company in your last days." With these words, he went out, slamming the door. Virginia followed him without a word. I stood in the hallway listening to the engine of their car start, the rustle of the tires on the gravel, and then there was silence. Complete, utter silence. Slowly, I walked back into the living room and sat down in my chair. The house that had seemed cozy before now felt empty and cold. I pulled a thumb drive out of my pocket, a copy of the one I had sent to the lawyer. It had all the evidence of their betrayal on it, everything it would take to ruin their lives. But was it worth it? I wasn't sure. Revenge wouldn't bring my son back to me, wouldn't fill the void that had formed after Eleanor left and was now even bigger. I thought about Alfred's words about me not being a good father and husband. Perhaps there was some truth in them. I was always immersed in my work, always suspicious, always keeping my distance. Maybe I did miss something important by focusing on providing for my family financially and forgetting that they needed something else. But that didn't excuse their actions. Nothing could justify a betrayal of this magnitude. I clutched the flash drive in my hand, feeling contradictory emotions fighting in me, rage and pain, the desire to punish and protect at the same time. Because no matter what, Alfred was still my son, the only child I'd ever had. What do I do? What to do next? I didn't know. All I knew was that the decision I made would change our lives forever, and there would be no turning back. 3 weeks had passed since the day I kicked Alfred and Virginia out of my house. 3 weeks of silence and solitude, which strangely enough brought me more peace than all the previous years of pretended marital harmony. I woke up that morning with a clear head and a firm decision. I called my attorney, Howard Pratt, with whom I had worked for the past 20 years, and made an appointment for 10 o'clock. Howard, a short man with a neat gray beard and shrewd eyes, met me in his office on the second floor of an old brick building in downtown Lowell. "Edgar," he shook my hand, "it's good to see you. You look determined." "There's a reason," I replied, sitting down in the leather chair across from his desk. "I got your letter in the videotape." Howard took off his glasses and wiped them with a napkin. "Suana, I have to say I'm shocked. I never thought Alfred would do something like this." "Neither did I sighed. "But facts are facts." "Have you decided what you're going to do?" Howard asked. "Do you want to file a police report?" I shook my head. "No, I've given it a lot of thought. A public scandal, a trial, possibly jail time for Alfred. It's not what I want. Not the legacy I want to leave." "I understand," Howard nodded. "And then why are you here?" "I want to change the will," I said. "Completely. And I want Alfred to know about it." Howard took out a notebook. "I'm listening. What changes do you want to make?" "I want to disinherit Alfred and Virginia. Completely. No house, no money, no personal effects." "That's your right," Howard made a note. "But the law usually provides." "I know what the law says," I interrupted him, "and I'm willing to go around it. We'll leave Alfred a token amount of $1 so that he can't contest the will on the grounds that I've forgotten about it." "All right," Howard nodded. "And the rest?" I took a deep breath. "I want to start a scholarship fund at Lowell College, the Eleanor Hutton Scholarship for students from low-income families who are studying elder care or geriatrics." Howard raised his eyebrows. "Unexpected, but noble. Eleanor always wanted to be a nurse," I explained. "But her family didn't have the money for training. She would have approved." "And the house? Sell it. The money would also go to the foundation." "Personal effects? Eleanor's jewelry," I wondered. "Eleanor's jewelry were the most valuable things to me, not because of their monetary value, but because of the memories they held. I would give most of it to the city's museum. A few special items I would like to give to Laura Kingsley, my cousin's daughter. She's the only relative who visited Eleanor when she was sick." "Good," Howard continued, taking notes. "Anything else?" "Yes," I leaned forward. "I want the will to clearly state why I disinherited Alfred. I want it to say that he tried to steal my money, planned to declare me incapacitated against my will, and generally acted like—" I hesitated, picking up the words. I hesitated for words. "Like an ungrateful son?" Howard suggested. "Yes," I nodded. "That's right. Edgar," Howard put down his pen, "I should warn you that such language could give Alfred grounds to contest the will. He might claim that you were acting out of revenge or emotion. I have proof, I reminded him. The tape. Yeah, but still, maybe we should just change the heirs. Without explanation, I wondered. Howard was right legally. It was better not to give Alfred anything to challenge. All right, I finally agreed. No explanation in the will itself. But I want you to tell him personally about my decision and why I made it. Howard nodded. I can do that. When? As soon as the will is ready and signed. I'll have the documents ready by tomorrow, Howard said. Are you sure you want to do this, Edgar? This is the final break with his son. I looked out the window at the fall street. Leaves swirled in the air, golden and scarlet, like the last burst of life before the winter slumber. Yes, I answered firmly. I'm sure of it. The breakup had already happened when he decided to steal from me instead of just asking. Howard walked me to the door. Same time tomorrow? I'll be waiting. I shook his hand and walked outside. That evening, on my way back from the grocery store, I noticed a familiar BMW parked in front of the neighbor's house. Alfred was sitting behind the wheel, watching my house. When he saw me, he quickly averted his gaze and started the engine. I stopped and looked directly at him. Our eyes met through the windshield. There was a mixture of anger, fear, and what I thought was regret in his gaze. But maybe it was just a play of light. I didn't wave at him, didn't nod, just watched. After a few seconds, he averted his eyes, backed up, and drove away. The next day, I met with Howard again, signed the new will, and gave him all the necessary instructions. When the formalities were completed, I felt strangely relieved, as if I had shed a heavy burden I had been carrying for years. I'll contact Alfred today, Howard said, tucking the documents into a folder. Do you want me to let you know his reaction? No, I shook my head. Doesn't matter anymore. I left Howard's office with a sense of accomplishment. It was done. I'd made a decision I wasn't going to back down from. The next 2 weeks passed in a quiet routine. I read, worked in the garden despite the cold weather, sorted through old photographs and documents. I ignored calls from Alfred, and after the 5th attempt, I blocked his number. On the 18th day after the change of will, I remembered exactly because it was Eleanor's birthday. There was a knock at the door. Opening it, I saw Virginia. She looked pale and gaunt, her elegant hairstyle replaced by a sloppy ponytail, and her expensive coat buttoned crookedly. Edgar, she smiled nervously. May I come in? I hesitated, but then stepped back, letting her in. We walked into the living room. Virginia sat on the edge of the sofa, clutching a small purse. Alfred doesn't know I'm here, she began. He wouldn't approve. Why did you come? I asked bluntly. She took a deep breath. To ask you to reconsider your decision. About the will. I grinned. Howard told you everything, just like I asked. Yes, she nodded. Edgar, I realize what we did was terrible, unforgivable. But to deprive Alfred of everything, it's too cruel. Cruel? I raised my eyebrows. Cruel is planning to declare your own father insane for money. I know, she lowered her head. We were a mess. We had financial problems, debts. What debts? I interrupted. Virginia bit her lip. Loans, mortgages. We're living beyond our means, to be honest. The BMW is leased. The house is too expensive for us. I lost my job at the travel agency 6 months ago, and I couldn't find a new one. And instead of just asking for help, you decided to steal from me? Alfred is too proud, she said quietly. He didn't want to ask. He wanted to prove he could do it on his own. And then it just got worse. That's no excuse, I said firmly. Of course not, Virginia agreed quickly. I'm just trying to explain, not justify. We made a terrible mistake. But Alfred is your son, your blood, your family. Family doesn't do that, I repeated my earlier words. People make mistakes, her voice was pleading. Everyone makes mistakes. Some mistakes can't be undone. Virginia gave me a long look. You know what happened after Howard told us about your decision? Alfred got drunk, for the first time since I've known him. He cried Edgar, said he'd ruined everything, that you'd never forgive him. I felt a stab of pain, but I didn't let it show on my face. He should have thought of that sooner. He's broken, Virginia continued, not because of the money, because of you. because of losing his father. He lost me the moment he decided that my money was more important than me, I replied. Virginia opened her purse and took out an envelope. He wrote you a letter. He asked me to give it to him. I took the envelope but did not open it. Please read it, she said. Not now if you don't want to, but read it. I put the envelope on the table. Is that all? Virginia nodded, rising. Yes. Thank you for listening. At the door, she turned around. You know, I really wanted to be a good daughter-in-law to you, at first, but then it just kind of, messed up. The choice is always ours, I said. You can stop and say no at any time. Oh, yes, she smiled weakly. You're right. Goodbye, Edgar. After she left, I sat staring at the envelope for a long time. Part of me wanted to throw it away without reading it, but the other part of me, the part that still remembered little Alfred running to me with open arms, insisted on finding out what he'd written. Eventually, I put the envelope aside in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'd be ready to read it, but not now. The following week, I met with the administration of Lowell College to discuss the details of a future scholarship fund. The dean of the School of Health Sciences, an energetic woman in her 50s named Helen Forrester, was delighted with my initiative. Mr. Hutton, this is extremely generous of you, she said as we sat in her office discussing the terms. The scholarship in your wife's name will help many students get an education that would otherwise be out of their reach. Eleanor would be delighted, I replied. She has always wanted to help people. May I ask why geriatrics? The dean asked. I thought about it for a moment. Because old people deserve care and respect. They deserve to face the end of their lives with dignity. And because there are too few good professionals in this field. That's true, Helen nodded. And the demand only grows as life expectancy increases. We discussed the details, the criteria for selecting scholarship recipients, the amount of money to be paid out, and the conditions under which the funds would be used. I insisted that the fund be started as soon as possible while I was still alive. I wanted to see the fruits of my decision. Leaving the dean's office, I felt a strange satisfaction. For the first time in a long time, I was doing something truly worthwhile, something that would outlive me and leave a mark on the world. When I got home, I began to make a list of things I needed to do. Contact the real estate agency about selling the house, meet with the director of the city museum about Eleanor's jewelry, contact Laura Kingsley. At that moment, the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered it anyway. Mr. Hutton? A man's voice asked. This is Dr. Morris from Lowell City Hospital. Your son, Alfred Hutton, has been in an automobile accident. I felt my heart squeeze. Is he alive? Yes, the doctor replied. But his condition is serious. Concussion, broken ribs, internal bleeding. We're prepping him for surgery. Yeah, I stammered. I'll be there. When I hung up the phone, I stood there in a daze for a long time. Despite everything that had happened between us, despite his betrayal, Alfred was still my son. The thought that I might lose him forever was unbearable. I grabbed my car keys and hurried to the door. But as I stepped out onto the porch, I suddenly stopped. What would I say to him? What would he say to me? Would this accident change anything between us? I didn't know the answers to these questions. All I knew was that I had to be there for him. Not for him, for me. For the memory of the boy I once loved most in the world. For Eleanor, who would never forgive me if I didn't come. As I got into the car, I realized that my decision to exclude Alfred from the will still stands. It was one thing to be there for him in a difficult moment, and quite another to let him escape the consequences of his actions. I could forgive, but I couldn't forget, and I couldn't let him think he could get away with betrayal. My fortune would still go to the scholarship fund. My house would be sold. My plans would not change. But maybe there will still be room in my life for reconciliation. Not for a restoration of the old relationship. That was impossible. But for some new understanding, a new beginning. Maybe. On the way to the hospital, I thought about the 3 weeks I'd spent alone after breaking up with my son. About the strange sense of freedom and peace I'd felt when I'd been freed from the burden of a fake relationship. It was true freedom to live by my own rules, without regard for other people's expectations and demands. And I realized that I wasn't willing to give up that freedom, not even to reconcile with my son. I will be there for him now, in his hour of need. But then I will return to my new life, a life without toxic relationships, without manipulation, without lies. A life where I could finally be myself and do what I thought was right. At 78, I finally had my freedom, and it was the most valuable legacy I could leave myself.